It's been a long week, but finally, it is time for the next YouTuber League weekly recap. Welcome everyone. I am going to be your host as we talk about everyone's favorite sport, Blood Bowl. As the YouTuber League has already gone through its third week of matches, and I can promise you now that the matches are only going to get better from here on out, even if a select handful of teams are becoming more dominant, that can only mean their upcoming opponents will be all the more broken and mangled, no matter how one-sided they may be. Which means more blood, more injuries, and more chaotic nonsense on the pitch. But I have talked on long enough already. We got the third week of matches to go through, so let's get started with the recap. Starting us off, we have How Not to Contain Lizards versus Omega Eta Alpha. You already know what to expect with two heavy-hitting teams when it comes to violence and mayhem. But this match is certainly a dynamic match with how quickly the Ghouls and the Skinks can move the ball across the field. With Scythe's team using a quick snap maneuver to avoid the Lizards' front line, they instead did try to focus on building a solid wall around the cage. Although, the Undead are going to learn why you do not free the Lizards. For immediately they move all their players to contest the ball, which conveniently was fumbled by Omega Eta to open up this opportunity. With superior strength, the Lizards were able to create a window to grab the ball and score an incredibly fast touchdown for their defensive drive. On the next kickoff, the fans were outraged by this insult of a game, as they charged the pitch to encourage their promised game of blood. The Lizards suffer worse from this outcome despite their incredibly early lead, but it opens up the opportunity for the Undead to make an early push past the line of scrimmage. With two swords down for the count, the fans ultimately get their promised show of blood and violence, as Alora Kauro suffers a smashed ankle and is taken off the field. While the apothecary was busy tending to Kalos' injuries, things start to turn for the worse for the Lizards, as the great Vivianaja takes a jab from Bluto and is immediately killed from her broken neck. The Undead then exhibited unusual sympathy for the Lizards, as they quickly touch down to allow Pirate Joe's team to mourn Romke's fallen goddess. After a very brief reprieve, the Lizards take back to the field, ready to punish the Undead for slaying their captain and goddess. Although the preceding turn showed the Lizards faltering, fumbling the ball and failing their blocks initially. It fell upon the Skinks to rally the team, as once again we see unlikely players performing like elves. After an astonishing and bloody first half, the Lizards are gaining the ball once more to signal the second half. It was easy to forget that they were on the defensive for the first half, and with their offensive heavily weakened with the loss of two of their main players, the Reptilian team were pressured once more into attempting a daring early touchdown. After victory all but secured at this point for Pirate Joe's team, the Omega Alpha are not going to take this loss lying down. Despite the Lizards' perfect defensive play on the kickoff, the Ghouls were able to easily circumvent around the Saurus line, and thankfully while the injuries were incredibly light for a second half so far, Scythe's team was able to quickly bring the score up to 2-3. With enough time on the clock for a slim chance of a sack and tie game, the Undead go all in for the ball, but with some help from the Saurus in the final minutes of the game, Dara Nick Richal manages to make their escape once again for one final chance at a touchdown. However, the pass fails, and it falls to the crowd to return the ball back towards the Lizard side of the field. Omega Alpha unfortunately failed to secure the ball, as the game ends at a very high score of 2-3.
Let's see how bad this gets. Oof. Change of weather. Oh, you couldn't ask for a better kick.
Now it's time to move on to the Jailhouse Rockers going up against the Fluffy Orcs. And as we already know, the Orcs are anything but fluffy and non-violent, so you know we're in for a good time. With the glorious return of Bomber Dribblesnot in this game, he already decides to cooperate with his teammates, perhaps hoping to secure a spot on the team, or at least trying to save face after his embarrassing run versus the Outworn Ideas. Although, with the Goblins off their game early on, and early tackles to keep the sneaky gets in place, the Rockers are already getting massacred on the pitch. This beatdown continues for most of the half, although despite the loss of a lowly Goblin, the Underworld denizens are able to withstand the blows. It all fell down to Dribblesnot to find a window to pick up the ball and find salvation for this battered team. Alas, Dribblesnot fumbles the ball, not taking account for how much lighter the pigskin would be to his prized bombs. Although it's believed Dribblesnot may have been bribed to deliberately fumble the ball, Dribblesnot loves his money after all. The Orcs, still dominant on the field, struggled to claim the ball as the Rats stubbornly refused to let go of their prize, until finally they were pinned down by the Greenskins.
Yes! No, you, not the ball. Oh, come on!
Oops.
Bullshit! Okay, you gotta admit, Sven, that is BS at the highest level. Come on, you cannot argue that.
Mr. Fluffy, the team's mascot, somehow catches the ball without even looking, spending portions of the game entertaining the fans. It was almost like it was all an elaborate stunt Mr. Fluffy concocted to rile up the supporters of Fluffy Green. After once more spending time to hype up the stands, he does the unthinkable.
If you pull up a pass for this troll, I'll say you've... You fluky git! Okay, we're officially here in... This has to be the most bullshit fluke I've ever seen in my life.
Going into the second half, the Rockers strive to compete shatters after Mr. Fluffy's stunt. The Rats scurry to shelter and safety, but until the match comes to an end, the fans force them back onto the pitch to get beaten to a pulp by the Orcs' relentless assault. Only one suicidal Goblin attempted to hold the Wog back, but his fate was ultimately sealed as the Fluffy Green win the match 0-2.
Right. Could I get anything out of this match? Because I've had nothing go my way.
Well, steroids are a thing, you know.
There's also the Garglitzer. Yeah, you've got a significant amount of progression farther than I do. Plus, I have a Hobgoblin out. Oh no, whatever will I do? Loner Hobgoblin.
Oh no.
The Reichland All-Elite and the Cursed Suffering is next up, as the humans attempt to survive their gauntlet that is back-to-back matches against the Dwarves. Although after how they embarrassed the Mini Sons of Anarchy last week, they may be more than up to the challenge, with CM Punk's unnatural strength, and Kenny Omega able to hold the lines as a guard player. And it shows very early on as CM Punk and Orange Cassidy make a break through the Dwarven's lines immediately upon kickoff, sacking the ball like it was nothing for a very fast 1-0 lead. Now that the opening ceremonies are done, the match can truly begin as the Dwarves... Oh wait, the Cursed Suffering did the same formation again, allowing CM Punk to break through the lines with two other players. However, thanks to a hired wizard, the advance was halted briefly and we got a proper game going on. The only problem is the Hobgoblins forgot how to play a proper game of Blood Bowl and just continued to fumble the ball repeatedly. It was the reason for the easy 1-0 score for All Elite, and it was about to happen again here. The Curse decided they have had enough of being pushed around, And after fighting for a loose ball, the Hobgoblins win the brawl and finally get their hands on their prize. And with Orange Cassidy knocked off the pitch, trying to catch Clemens V was going to be a difficult ordeal. But it doesn't stop there. In a bizarre moment of inspiration, Clemens and our unproven journeyman Hobgoblin pass the ball in the most unconventional of methods.
Okay. Still a 4+. You need one more square. Yeah. 3+. Oh, he didn't catch it. He caught it from the rebound. Of course.
Let's go!
What the fuck? It's a loner even. It's a freaking loner.
No one knows if Rokebix was just showing off to impress the coach, or like all the Hobgoblins before him, he had no goddamn clue how to grab a ball. And with a final blitz and handoff, the cursed dwarves managed to tie the game at 1-1. With time still in the first half, Reichland was eager to regain their lead, and with a quick snap maneuver, they set up for a quick touchdown play. The sidelines are left open for him as Orange Cassidy recovers from his injuries to secure the ball, blitzing through the Chaos Dwarf sidelines to retake the All-Stars lead.
Let's see.
Come on. Let's finally see a failed GFI. Damn it.
No. Wow, that's a lot of scoring for this game. I wasn't expecting.
Going into the second half, we have the Cursed Sufferers setting up a perfect defensive play as they try to wedge an opening to put pressure on the ball. And it works incredibly well for the Dwarves, as Reichland overcommits their players to the line of scrimmage, allowing the Bull Centaurs to do what they do best, charging the back line of the field. With a shaky formations surrounded by the Dwarves and no full cage, it was only a matter of time before Orange Cassidy loses the ball to one of the bloodthirsty Centaurs.
You don't.
The sure feet. Instant, of course.
Thank
And
you.
the
Dwarf ball.
dwarf ball.
With an immediate grab of the ball, the Sufferers are in great position if they can hang on to the ball long enough to get back in formation. But Reichland came up and said no to that plan, as the fight for the ball began. It took multiple rounds, and multiple players were moved from the field, but in the end, the Dwarves won the brawl and made a break with the ball. Clemens V is mere feet away from tying the game, and with the humans surrounded on all corners, it all fell to Orange Cassidy to save the game. Clemens, full on adrenaline as he rushes to the end zone, fails to blitz Cassidy back to allow his score. This error allowed Cassidy to tackle down and secure the ball, instantly rushing back to the line of scrimmage. Anything can happen now, but it was ultimately the fans who won in the remaining minutes of the clock. Blood soaked the field at long last, and with the Cursed Suffering failing to regain the ball, Reichland managed to win the match 2-1. On match 3 of the week, we have Slaaneshi Elves versus the Leglickers, with Coach Rompke away to indulge in the finer qualities of a Slaaneshi worshipper. He entrusted his assistant coaches and team to get victory in his absence. Or maybe he was merely afraid of the terrifying opponent before him, for with 3 guarding players and 1 with the mightiest of blows, this may be an uphill fight for him. It only took a few minutes of the match to quell those fears. With the Star Blitzer gone, the atmosphere rapidly changed as both teams played a very cautious game of Blood Bowl, with the Leglickers keeping the Elves at bay on the line of scrimmage. Neither team was willing to push in on the other as the clock continued to count down. Eventually, As the Amazons set up to surround the elves, they find a window to break through the tightening noose into their back lines. With a touchdown nearly in reach, the Leglickers wedge their way through the line, as Scotty makes one final blitz for the ball. A risky gambit, but it sadly doesn't deny the elves their touchdown, leading the match 1-0. The second half plays out very similarly. Despite the added potential of our female players' guard pieces, they struggle to wear down the elves, as they haven't been able to take out any of their players by this point. Eventually, they get cornered into the sidelines, causing them to attempt a breakaway pass. With the failed catch of the ball, it became a frantic dogpile as the Slaaneshi elves charged the loose ball and made a break for it. In response, the Amazons take their frustration out by bashing elves to a pulp. But ultimately, the game was stalled out to a 2-0 victory for the elves. It is time to move on to match number 5, with the Greatest Cage going against the Bosses of Sauce. Many injuries are surely going to be had in this game, with the twig-like snotlings and the ogre's fetish of flattening their opponents at every possible opportunity. That is exactly what we get, for when Gone in 60 Seconds gets overzealous with snacking on snotlings, Ketchup decides he should be the first one to hit the injury box.
Oh, Gone in 60 Seconds. Don't die on me. Dress. Oh no, you're a
We're
monster.
trying it again!
You're a monster.
Yes!
Dress!
The resilient werewolf is off the pitch, but is able to regenerate from his injury for the next drive, which left one more werewolf to be taken off the field.
I find like the games are just boring. Oh, not another one. Oh, that's fine.
That's not fine!
Oh, okay, well, shit, fuck me. Oh, you weren't kidding about it. Oh, God.
Catch
No.
up!
Oh, please, God. I need
Oh,
this.
they both regen. Ketchup's just farming them for SPP now.
Both dogs are out, if only temporarily. The ogres continue to lay waste to the rest of the necromantic while recovering the loose ball. They almost managed to get through the undead, but despite their twitchy nature, the snotlings were tackled down to eventually give the undead a 1-0 lead.
Oh, dang it.
Finally.
That was as close as it could have been.
Going into the second half, the sauces are not in good shape, thanks to the undead's regeneration, and with only 5 snotlings remaining, the Cage are going to have a much easier time pushing into the ogre's side of the field. Early knockouts help tremendously for the ogres in evening up the numbers, and with a bounty on Ketchup's head for injuring the werewolves earlier, he unintentionally draws in the majority of the necromantic team. Still breathing, however, after being ganged up, the rest of the sauce have a window to break through. However, they were too busy taking bets on whether Ketchup would die to play the match. And as per their boneheaded nature, everything falls apart for the team. More ogres get fouled, and everyone dives onto the ball as an all-out brawl takes place. And when the dust was all settled, Mango Habanero makes it out alive with the ball, until Gone in 60 Seconds runs all over him and steals the ball. With the ball now secured, the werewolf runs into the end zone to make it a 2-0 victory for the Greatest Cage. Now, it is time to move on to our next match, with the Fragile Bloodmarks versus the Mini Sons of Anarchy. The Bloodmarks are unfortunately missing their catcher paper for this match, and the lack of speed and agility is certainly going to be felt. for you can't get more bashy than a dwarf team so early in the season. This fact is made apparent throughout the first half, for only blitzers Kerplunk and Sploosh were able to break through the line to make a play at the ball, forcing the Sons of Anarchy to pull their players back to protect their runner. It does pay off though ultimately, as the dwarves were able to fight back the elves at every opportunity, although many risks were taken to make it happen. Eventually, the dwarves were able to stay standing long enough to break through the Bloodmarks line and secure a 1-0 lead going into the second half. Despite getting in the Sons of Anarchy's face for the majority of the first half, the Bloodmarks are still nearly at full strength going into the second half, as they miraculously avoided getting their players injured in the previous beatdown. Just the extra players alone allowed them to do their patented 2-turn touchdown that they attempted last week when they went up against Pirate Joe and his Lizardmen. And you know what that means, fans. Nearly a whole second half of the Bloodmarks getting beaten down yet again. The elves play their hand yet again at sacking the ball, and it works out much better this time around. The overextended dwarves allowed for the Bloodmarks to secure the ball, albeit very briefly, as we get a hilarious game of hot potato as the ball gets lost and picked up repeatedly throughout the drive. After all the fun and games were done, though, Bobby manages to make a break through the line, and with just moments left in the game, he manages to secure Mini Sons of Anarchy's first win of the season.
Let's see.
The good old
defending.
Tomb Guardians.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and you don't really have much in the way of a proper counter for that, do you?
No, I really don't.
Next up in our round of matches is the Nuclear Winters up against the Outworn Ideas. With Lumeriferous Ether's unusual train regiment giving him more agility than your normal undead big guy, it will be interesting to see if Coach Brightops is able to make use of their skills. But that lack of extra punching power can easily be a negative against the elves, as they start off traditionally sizing each other up and looking for weaknesses in each other's formation. This works out well for the Dark Elves starting off, as they knock players off the field with Snow White and her insatiable appetite for violence. And with the Khemri forced to spread out, the Blitzers dive in for every free shot they can get. With Flat Earth eventually succumbing to the pressure, this signals an open window for the Winter to make a break through the line of scrimmage. If they can get past Steady State Theory first though, who is able to rush down Snowflake, who is carrying the ball. With Snowflake getting tackled, Steady State frees up Homeopathy as he goes to pick up the ball.
Oh, my camera went super weird there for a second.
Alright, let's see if we can pick it up.
Oof. You still have all 3 of your rerolls. You haven't had to do a lot of risky things, so. What the fuck? That's bull! You know it.
It may be, but it's hilarious, Bull.
With a case of deja vu from the previous game between Reichland All Elite and Curse Suffering now done, there will be no further miracles made as the Dark Elves sack the ball back into their greedy hands. Outworn Ideas are quick to respond and able to stay on Snow White as the ball traverses the field, but with no elves on the Khemri side of the field nearing the end of the first half, getting the score is going to be a tall order, even for Nuclear Winters. Snow White makes a desperate play, but failing to complete the pass, the Khemri swarm the ball and are able to keep the game tied going into the second half. With no players injured and Flat Earth back on the field, the Outworn Ideas are in a great position right now, as they get the offensive drive for the rest of the match. Although they failed to take out any of the Elven players, so this will heavily come down to how solid the Khemri's formation is. But disaster strikes immediately, leaving a Tomb Guard down to open a window to the ball and to try and take out one of the valuable big guys. The Khemri were able to recover miraculously, which is saying a lot with how poorly the undead are at picking up the ball, and with the drive now underway, we get a good old-fashioned brawl. Of course, this would be a losing bout for the Elves, but they pull every trick in the book to get an advantage, with repeated fouls to try and take Flat Earth off the field again. As the Khemri continues to spread out, the Dark Elves are able to find a window to strike at Miasma. He withstands the blow, but not after being surrounded by the Elven players. Through a lot of effort, Miasma is able to break free, but it is short-lived as a tighter noose gets wrapped around him by the Elves. Eventually, with no supporting players, the frigid winter finally gets the best of the Miasma, with Snow White reclaiming her prize ball. Pinned in the corner, and only minutes left on the clock, can somehow the Outworn Ideas reclaim the ball or fall victim to Elf bullshit? The answer is obvious, as Elf bullshit succeeds in getting the ball across the field, but not without lone Tomb Guards free to hunt down the ambitious Lion Elf.
Oh god. No rerolls.
Yep.
Decay. Ah! Ah! The twos! Sorry. I'm getting excited.
In one final play, with seconds on the clock, Toxic Slushy makes a sprint for the end zone.
Let's see if he fails or not.
Oh my god.
All
Gotta
right.
make the one GFI to protect himself from the,
Charge.
Yeah, that's the failure.
The lineman's feet gets caught on the remains of a former Blood Bowl player to end the match at a scoreless game, with only a single player out of the match with an injury.
And otherwise, this should be a stomp.
Moving on, we get a much more violent game between the Bouncing Warriors and the Godlike Puns. Not much more really needs to be said than that. It was bloody, it was miraculously violent, as immediately Kislev players got maimed and murdered, with 2 fatalities and 3 under injuries before the first touchdown was scored.
And I get SVP. That is a horrific start for if it was a player. I'll say player. Yeah, 5 dead or injured. And it's a little over halfway through the first half.
With that numbers advantage already, the Puns keep ramming their way through the line until we see the Norse winning the game at 4-0. And so ends our Week 3 recap of the season, with the Godlike Puns now sitting in 3rd place after nearly destroying the Kislev, with How Not to Contain Lizards and Reichland All Elite tied in 1st place with 3 wins each. Eventually, one of these 2 behemoths will fall when faced off against each other. But as it stands now, they are the only teams remaining with a perfect winning record so far. And now, we talk about the Week 4 matchups, as all the teams are finally starting to benefit from their training to make them much more fearsome forces, with additional reserve players for the teams to better withstand the violence to come. Starting off with match 1 is Omega Eta Alpha versus the Godlike Puns, and with the godlike boost and power the Puns have gotten after their last game, even the undead will have reason to cower before them. Although no player has received any special training so far, they are still getting their essential skill sets in. Don't expect Malt's team to go easy on these walking carcasses. Match 2 will be the Bouncing Warriors versus Mini Sons of Anarchy. With only 7 players being present for the Bouncing Warriors, it's going to be a one-sided bloodfest. Need I say more? fragile Bloodmarks are going up against the Nuclear Winters for match 3. This will be a very tactical match, for Sploosh and Kerplunk are currently the only 2 players in the league able to take on Snow White and prevent the Dark Elves from running rampant on the sidelines. But the Dark Elves are far more resilient than the Bloodmarks, so this match will ultimately come down to how violent our 2 teams want to be. Match 4 is Outworn Ideas versus the Greatest Cage. As always, the Werewolf is always the wild card in these matchups, for if they can even take out one of the Tomb Guards, that could very quickly spell doom for the Khemri's entire game plan. Bosses of Sauce versus Reichland All Elite is match number 5, as the human team continues to go up against Bashy team after Bashy team, but they have overcome all challenges so far, so winning against the Ogres should all be but certainty at this point. But how many players will survive the match from Ketchup's Rampage? Match 6 is the Cursed Suffering versus the Slaaneshi Elves, and while the Elves are not hindered by the Dwarves' ability to tackle down the Elves yet, the Bull Centaurs are certainly going to make things awkward for their game. The Dwarves having yet to complete any of their skill training may be the only thing keeping these Elves from serious injuries. This will be a match to watch. Match 7 is the Leglickers versus the Jailhouse Rockers. While both teams have suffered greatly, the Amazons are still in great shape for this upcoming match. With how fragile the Underworld can be and the amount of guard players they'll be bringing onto the field, fighting them head on will be out of the question for the Rockers. Match 8, to end off the week, will be Fluffy Green versus How Not to Contain Lizards. We have another week of mighty Bash teams, but this is going to be a drastically difficult match for the Lizards. With one source out for the match and the death of Vivian Aja, the Lizards will need to rely heavily on guile and wit to have a chance at victory, never mind surviving the match without further losses. I had hoped to add additions to the recap by this point, but as the league continues on throughout the season, this will still be a work in progress. I thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you for the next recap.